The Lonely Giantess. She sat alone at the edge of the alien forest, her long legs curled beneath her body, her massive hands covering her face. The colony had mocked her again, whispering words she had heard her entire life. Too big, too heavy, too useless. Their cruel voices echoed in her mind like sharp knives. She was taller than any of her kind, her body larger than all the others. To them, she was a mistake, a curse. They believed her size made her unfit to carry life, unfit to be loved. For many years she hid in shadows, watching others live with joy she thought she would never know. She dreamed of someone who might see her heart instead of her body. But every time she hoped, the dream shattered into silence. She whispered to herself again and again, "I'm too big to be loved." Those words became her cage, invisible but stronger than any wall. The colony kept her on the outer edge, far from their gatherings. They told travelers she was dangerous. They told children to never look at her. And yet the truth was simple. She was lonely. Her strength, her size, the very things that could protect them, were seen only as shame. Then came the night of fire. A human ship tore through the sky, flames cutting across the black clouds. It crashed beyond the trees with a thunder that shook the ground. The colony panicked. Many ran, others gathered in fear. For them, humans were small but fierce, creatures of war. To them, the crash was a bad omen. She, however, felt something else. Her heart pounded in her chest. A strange pull urged her forward. Her enormous frame moved silently through the woods until she reached the broken ship. Metal lay twisted, smoke rising into the night, and there, crawling out of the wreckage, was a man, a human. He was smaller than her arm, fragile compared to her size. His face was dirty with ash, his clothes torn. Yet when his eyes lifted and met her, something inside her froze. She expected fear, disgust, or hatred, the same look she always saw. But his gaze was different. His eyes widened, not with terror, but with wonder. For a moment neither moved. He stared at her towering frame, and she stared at his fragile body. 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. He will run. He will scream. He will hate me. She wanted to turn away, to hide again in the darkness, but his lips parted, and he whispered one word, "Beautiful." The word struck her harder than any wound. She staggered back, unsure if she had heard him right. No one had ever spoken such a word to her. The colony had only called her monster, mistake, curse. But this human, this fragile creature, looked at her as if she was something worth admiring. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, I am too big. Too wrong, you should fear me." Her words came out like a broken plea. She expected him to run, yet he took a step closer, his hand pressing against the ground to steady himself. His gaze never wavered. From the trees behind her, voices echoed. The colony had followed. They shouted warnings. "Stay back, human. Do not touch her. She is cursed." Their words were sharp, filled with anger and fear, but the human did not listen. His eyes remained fixed on her. He saw not her size, not her shame, but her sorrow. She turned away, hiding her face. Her chest shook with silent sobs. She whispered again, "I'm too big to be loved." The human tilted his head, hearing the pain in her voice. His steps were slow but steady as he came closer. His voice was quiet but strong. "No, you are not too big. You are exactly as you should be." Her heart hammered inside her chest. She wanted to believe him, but fear chained her spirit. The colony's cruel laughter echoed behind her. They would never allow this. They would never accept her. Yet in that moment, when his eyes held ours, something shifted. A spark of hope flickered deep within her soul. The night grew colder, the flames of the broken ship fading into smoke. Around them the colony whispered in rage, but the human's presence silenced the world for her. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, not as a curse, not as a mistake, but as someone worthy of being noticed. And though fear pressed against her heart, another thought rose stronger. What if this human is different? The human's gaze. The night was heavy with silence. The smoke of the broken ship drifted high into the stars. She stood frozen, her giant body trembling with fear and doubt. Behind her, the colony whispered with scorn, their eyes sharp like knives, their voices filled with judgment. They wanted the human to run, to leave her in her shame, but he did not move away. Instead, the human stepped closer. His legs were weak, his clothes torn, but his gaze was firm. His eyes carried something she had never seen before, not fear, not disgust, but recognition, as if he saw her heart and not her body. The alien leaders shouted from the shadows, "Do not touch her, human. She is unworthy. She is too big, too wrong." Their voices echoed in anger, but the human ignored them. His eyes never left hers. He tilted his head slightly and spoke softly. "Why do you cry?" Her breath caught. No one had ever asked her that. Not once in her long life, her own people mocked her tears, mocked her silence. But this fragile man from another world asked with gentle care. Her voice broke as she answered, "Because I am too big, too heavy, too unfit to bring life. My body is a curse. I was born wrong." She lowered her head, ashamed. Her massive hands covered her face again. The human shook his head slowly. His eyes scanned her enormous form, but there was no fear in them. "No," he whispered. "You are not wrong. You are strong. You are alive. That is not a curse." The words stunned her. Her people gasped with fury. Thus, a colony leader stepped forward, his staff striking the ground. "She is dangerous. She cannot breed. She is nothing." His tone was sharp like thunder. His words meant to cut, but the human's voice rose against him. "Then you are blind," he said, his tone calm but fierce. "She is not nothing. I see her, and she is more than you believe." The crowd hissed with anger, their voices mixed like a storm. "Outsider, leave her. She will bring you ruin." But the human stood tall, small compared to her vast size, yet unmoved. Her chest ached as she looked down at him. For the first time, someone had stood against her colony for her sake. Someone had spoken words she never dared to dream. Her heart beat faster, her voice trembling as she asked, "Why do you not fear me? All others fear." The human's lips curved into a faint smile, his face dirty, his body weak, but his eyes shone with warmth. "Because I see you," he said. "Not the size, not the shape, but you." Her throat tightened. The words were impossible, unreal. She wanted to believe, but fear chained her. "They are right," she whispered. "I cannot be what they want. I cannot give life. I am useless." The human stepped closer still, his hand lifted, shaking but steady. He pressed it gently against her knee, the only part of her body within his reach. The touch was small, but it burned like fire in her heart. "Then they are fools," he said. "Life is not only about breeding. Life is about love, strength, hope, and you carry all of that." Her breath caught, her enormous frame shook. No one had ever touched her with kindness. No one had ever dared to defend her. The colony stared in horror, their voices growing louder. "He is cursed. He touches the outcast. He will die for this." Fear wrapped around her chest. She wanted to step back, to break free from the moment before it shattered, but his hand stayed on her skin, steady, warm, defiant. His gaze refused to break, and then she realized something. He was fragile, small, easily broken. The colony could end him in seconds, yet he stood without fear. His courage was not in his size, but in his heart. That truth pierced her like light in endless darkness. The alien leader raised his staff higher, his voice booming. "Enough! We will not allow this human step away or suffer." But the human did not move. He only pressed his hand firmer against her skin and whispered, "I will not leave you." The words struck her soul. Tears rolled down her massive cheeks. For the first time in her life, someone chose her, not despite her size, but because of who she was. The colony murmured in rage, plotting punishment, their whispers like a storm in the distance. Yet in her heart, the storm was breaking. A new light was rising. She looked at the human, her voice shaking. "Why risk everything for me?" The human's answer was simple. His eyes never wavered. "Because no one deserves to live unloved." And in that moment, she felt something she had never known before. Hope, the bond of defiance. The night air was heavy, filled with the sharp voices of the colony. They gathered like a wave of shadows, their eyes fixed on the human and the giantess. Rage and disbelief burned in their stares. How could a fragile outsider defy their law? How could he stand beside the one they called a curse? She trembled, her enormous body shaking. Her heart screamed with both fear and longing. She wanted to pull away, to protect him from the anger of her people. But the warmth of his hand still lingered on her skin, anchoring her. His words echoed inside her. "I will not leave you." The colony leader raised his staff high, his voice echoing. "Human, you are blind. She cannot give life. She cannot serve. She is nothing. If you do not step away, you will share her exile." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Exile meant death. Casto, but into the frozen wastelands where no one survived. Her chest tightened in terror. She whispered to the human, her voice trembling. "Go, please. Do not lose your life for me." But he shook his head slowly, his eyes sharp with quiet defiance. "No, I will not leave you to suffer alone. If exile is the price, then I will walk with you." Her breath broke. The words shattered the chains around her heart. No one had ever spoken such devotion, not her people, not her family, not anyone. Tears welled in her eyes, giant drops glistening under the moonlight. She whispered, Why risk yourself?" The human's gaze was steady. "Because your worth is not measured by what they demand. Your worth is already here, in your heart. I see it, even if they do not." The colony hissed in anger. Their whispers rose like a storm. Some shouted for punishment. Others demanded the human be caged. Fear crackled in the air, yet the human did not waver. His small frame stood like stone before the tide. She looked at him, and in that moment something inside her changed. The shame she carried, the weight of her loneliness, began to break apart, piece by piece. He did not see a monster. He saw her. The leader slammed his staff into the ground. The earth trembled beneath them. "Then hear this, giant. You and the human are bound by your defiance. At dawn you will both stand trial. If you cannot prove your worth, you will be cast into the wastelands." The crowd cheered with cruel delight, their voices sharp like knives. They wanted her gone. They wanted the human destroyed for his defiance. She lowered her head, despair washing over her. The trial was a death sentence. She could not win. She was already doomed. But the human turned to her, his hand resting gently on her massive arm, his voice calm but firm. "Do not give in. They may call you worthless, but I will stand with you. We will not break." Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe. She wanted to hold on to his strength. For the first time, she did not feel alone. For the first time, someone was ready to face the storm at her side. As the crowd dispersed, whispers still burning like fire, she sat at the edge of the village, her eyes wet with tears. The human sat near her, small and fragile, but his presence stronger than the stars above. She spoke in a broken whisper. "They will destroy us. They always win." The human looked up at her, his gaze firm. "No, not always. Sometimes it only takes one voice, one act to change everything." She stared at him, his courage both confusing and comforting. In her world, no one had ever spoken against the colony. To defy them meant death. Yet here was a fragile human, refusing to bow, refusing to leave her. Her heart trembled with something new, something dangerous, hope. For hours they spoke beneath the stars. He asked about her life, her dreams, her pain. She told him of the cruel whispers, the years of silence, the endless shame. He listened to every word, not with pity, but with care, and slowly, as the night stretched on, something invisible formed between them, a bee, on not of duty or breeding, but of defiance and truth. He saw her, and she let herself be seen. The dawn crept over the horizon, pale light touching the trees. The trial awaited, her heart filled with dread, but also with fire. She was not alone anymore. As they rose to face the day, the colony gathered in the great hall, eyes burning with judgment. The leader's staff struck the ground once more. Today the outcast will prove her worth or vanish forever. The human reached for her hand, his small fingers brushing against her massive palm, his voice steady. We face this together. And for the first time in her life, she believed it. The trial of worth. The sun rose over the alien colony, its pale light spilling across the stone courtyard where the trial would take place. The villagers gathered in a wide circle, their whispers sharp, their eyes burning with judgment. In the center stood the giantess, her massive frame trembling, and beside her, the human stood small, yet unbroken. The leader raised his staff, his voice carrying through the air. Today, the outcast will face her trial. Today, she must prove her worth. If she cannot, she will be exiled into the wastelands, and the human with her. The crowd roared with cruel delight. Their voices thundered. Exile! Exile! The giantess lowered her head, shame crushing her. She had never proven anything in her life, always hidden, always shunned. How could she face them now? Her voice shook as she whispered, I cannot do this. The human turned to her, his gaze steady, his voice quiet but strong. Yes, you can. They want you broken, but I will not let you fall. Remember what I told you. Your worth is not in what they demand, it is in who you are. She looked at him, his small body fragile compared to her own. Yet his spirit burned brighter than the sun. His courage gave her strength. A flicker of hope stirred in her chest. The trial began. The leader's voice rang out. You are too large, too heavy, unfit to breed, unfit to serve. Prove otherwise or vanish. He struck the staff against the ground, and the trial of tasks began. First came the test of endurance. They placed before her a massive stone, one no ordinary alien could lift. The crowd sneered. She is big but clumsy. She will fail. But with trembling hands she bent down. Her body shook, her arms strained. Slowly, she lifted the stone high, higher than any of them could. Gasps filled the air. For a moment, silence fell. The leader narrowed his eyes. Strength is nothing without purpose, he growled. Next trial, loyalty. They brought forth a young alien child, tied to a post near the flames. The test was cruel. She was told to rescue the child before the fire consumed him, but the ground was covered with sharp spikes. If she stepped wrongly, she would fall. Her body shook. The colony mocked her. She will crush the child. She is too big, too clumsy. But before fear could stop her, the human's voice rose. You can do this. Trust yourself. With careful steps, her massive hands reached through the fire, lifting the child gently. Her fingers were enormous, but her touch was soft. She shielded the little one with her own arm and brought him safely to his mother. The crowd gasped again. The child clung to her, refusing to let go. Murmurs spread among the villagers, doubt flickered in their eyes. For the first time, they saw her strength as more than shame. They saw her care, her tenderness. But the leader's anger grew. His voice roared, None of this matters. She cannot give life. She is cursed. She cannot stay. The human stepped forward, his small frame between her and the crowd. His voice rang clear. You are wrong. Her worth is not in what she cannot do. It is in what she already is. She has the strength to protect, the kindness to care, the courage to stand. And I will not let you cast her away. The colony erupted in chaos. Some shouted in anger, others fell silent, uncertain. Never had anyone defied the leader with such fire. The giantess looked down at the human, her heart pounding. She whispered, You risk everything for me. He turned his head up, his eyes steady. I do, because you are worth everything. Her body shook with emotion. The chains of shame that had bound her for years cracked. For the first time she stood tall, her massive frame rising above the crowd, not in fear, but in strength. The leader slammed his staff again, his voice cold. Then hear me, outcast. Your trial is not finished. At nightfall, you will face the last test. If you fail, both you and the human will be cast into the wastelands forever." The crowd roared with approval. The sound echoed like thunder, but in her heart, a new fire burned. She was no longer alone. She looked at the human beside her, his hand brushing hers, his voice steady. "We will face this final trial together." And as the sun dipped lower in the sky, she believed it. For the first time, she believed she was not too big to be loved. Human's touch. The sun slipped behind the jagged cliffs, shadows stretching long over the alien village. The air grew cold, heavy with the weight of judgment. In the center of the courtyard, the giantess sat, her massive hands trembling in her lap. Around her, the colony gathered, waiting for the final trial at nightfall. Their whispers rose like 1,000 knives. "She will fail. She is cursed. The human will die with her." Her heart ached with dread. She stared at the ground, afraid to lift her eyes. All her life she had been mocked, shamed, rejected. And now, before the last trial, she felt the weight of hopelessness pressing down once more. The human stood beside her, small in size but firm in spirit. His eyes scanned the crowd, his jaw set with quiet defiance. He turned to her and spoke softly. "Do not bow your head. You are stronger than all of them. They cannot see it, but I can." Her breath shook, her voice barely a whisper. "I am too big, too wrong. My body is a curse. They will never see me as worthy." The human stepped closer. His hand reached out, trembling but steady. He placed it against her massive palm. His touch was small, yet it carried a warmth that spread through her entire body. His voice was steady as he whispered, "Your body is not wrong. It is yours. It is powerful. It is beautiful." Her chest tightened, her eyes filled with tears. Never had anyone touched her without fear or mockery. Never had anyone spoken such words. The human's hand was so small compared to her, yet it anchored her more than the earth itself. The colony hissed with anger. "He touches the cursed one. He defies our law." But the human did not release her hand. He lifted his gaze to the crowd. "You are blind. You see only size, only difference. But I see what you cannot. I see her heart." The whispers turned to shouts. The leader's staff struck the ground. "At nightfall she will face the last trial. Your words mean nothing, outsider." But his words meant everything to her. In the silence between the shouts, she felt her heart beating in a new rhythm, a rhythm of hope, of strength, of love she had never believed she could deserve. She leaned closer, her voice breaking. "Why do you stay with me? Why do you risk your life?" The human's eyes softened. "Because you are worth staying for. Because you are not too big to be loved." Her tears fell, glistening under the fading light. She wanted to hold him, to shield him from the cruelty of her people, but she feared her size, feared her strength. "I will crush you if I hold you," she whispered. The human shook his head gently, his voice calm. "Then let me decide. Trust me." With trembling hands, she lifted him carefully, cradling him against her chest. Her body shook with fear, but his warmth pressed against her skin, his heartbeat steady, his arms wrapped around her neck. For the first time in her life, she was not too big. She was simply held, simply loved. The crowd gasped, some in shock, others in rage, but neither of them cared. In that moment, the world fell silent. The bond between them shone brighter than the setting sun. Then, without warning, the air split with a sharp cry. From beyond the cliffs, shadows emerged, dark figures moving fast. A rival tribe, armed with jagged weapons, stormed into the village, their voices filled with scorn. "The cursed one still lives. Tonight she dies, and with her, the human." Panic spread through the colony. Villagers scattered in fear. The leader shouted commands, but his voice trembled. The rival tribes surged forward like a wave, their eyes fixed on the giantess. She froze, terror clutching her chest. Her people had never wanted her, and now enemies came to destroy her. She turned to the human, her voice breaking. "They will kill me, and you too." But the human held her tight. Her, his eyes burned with fire. "No, they will not. Not while I stand with you." Her heart pounded. For the first time, she saw not fear in his eyes, but fierce resolve, and in that moment, she realized the truth. Her size, her strength, the very things she thought made her cursed, were now their only chance to survive. The rival tribe closed in, weapons raised. The colony shrieked in terror. The leader faltered, powerless. All eyes turned to her, the outcast, the unwanted, and with the human's touch still burning on her skin, she rose to her full height, towering over all. For the first time, not in shame, but in defiance, her voice thundered across the courtyard. "If you want him, you must go through me." The enemy tribe halted for a moment, their eyes wide. The crowd fell silent. The giantess stood tall, her human held close, and for the first time in her life, she was not too big to be loved. She was big enough to fight. The battle for acceptance. The rival tribes surged forward, their weapons gleaming under the pale moonlight. Their cries filled the night, loud and merciless. The villagers screamed and scattered, some hiding in the shadows, others clutching their children. The colony leader raised his staff, but his voice cracked with fear. He was powerless against the enemy. The giantess stood tall in the center of the courtyard, the human clutched carefully in her hand. Her heart pounded like thunder. For years, she had believed her size was a curse. For years, she had hidden in shame. But now her size was the only shield standing between her people and destruction. The human looked up at her, his eyes burning with resolve. "You are not cursed. You are their only hope. Show them. Show them who you truly are." Her chest swelled with a fire she had never known. Slowly, she lowered the human to the ground, careful with her touch. His tiny hand brushed against her massive finger, his voice steady. "I will fight with you." The rival warriors charged, their steps pounding like drums. The giantess roared, a sound that shook the stones beneath them. She swung her massive arm, scattering the first wave of attackers like leaves in a storm. The ground trembled as bodies crashed against the walls. Gasps filled the colony. For the first time, they saw her not as a monster, but as a protector. The enemy came again, faster, sharper. Spears flew through the air, slicing toward her chest. She raised her arms, the weapons clanging harmlessly against her thick skin. One spear grazed her shoulder, leaving a shallow mark, but she did not falter. She stepped forward, her foot slamming into the ground, knocking several enemies off their feet. Beside her, the human fought too, his blade small compared to theirs, but his courage larger than life. He moved quick, striking down attackers who slipped past her reach. Together they became a storm, her strength and his resolve blending into one. The colony watched in silence, their whispers stilled by awe. The one they had called cursed, the one they had shunned, was now their shield. Their survival rested on the giantess they had rejected. The rival tribe regrouped, their leader snarling with rage. "She is only size, break her legs, bring her down." Warriors swarmed at her feet, hacking with jagged blades. She stumbled, her knees buckling for a moment. Pain shot through her legs. Her heart faltered, fear whispered, "They will bring me down. They will see me fail." But then she heard him, the human. His voice rose above the chaos, strong and unshaken. "Stand tall. You are not too big to be loved. You are big enough to protect us all." The words cut through the pain. Her eyes burned with fire. With a roar, she slammed her hands against the ground, the force throwing enemies back like dust in the wind. She rose to her full height once more, towering above all, her eyes fierce, her body unbroken. The rival leader snarled and rushed forward, his blade long and curved. He leapt at the human, aiming to strike him down. The crowd screamed. The human raised his blade, too small to block the attack. But before the strike could land, her massive hand swept across the air, catching the rival leader mid-leap. She squeezed, his weapon clattering to the ground. His body dangled helpless in her grip. Her voice thundered, "No one touches him." The rival warriors froze, fear rippling through them. Their leader choked in her grasp. The giantess lifted him high, then slammed him into the earth with a force that cracked the stones. Silence fell across the courtyard. The remaining enemies stared in shock. Their courage broke like glass. One by one they fled into the night, their cries fading into the distance. The battle was over. For a moment all was quiet. Only the sound of her heavy breath and the human's steady steps filled the air. He looked up at her, his eyes shining with pride. "You did it. You saved them." Her chest heaved, her knees trembled. She looked around at the colony, their faces stunned, wide-eyed, silent. For the first time, they did not look at her with scorn. They looked at her with awe, with respect, with fear mixed with gratitude. She lowered her head, her voice soft. "I was always told I was too big, too wrong." Her eyes turned to the human, tears glistening. "But you stayed. You believed." He stepped forward, placing his hand gently against her massive arm, his voice steady. "Because I saw the truth. You were never too big. You were always enough." The colony leader lowered his staff, his voice quiet. "Perhaps we were wrong." His words shook the air. The crowd murmured, uncertain but moved. The giantess stood tall, her chest still rising with heavy breaths, the human at her side. Together they had defied fate. Together they had changed the night. But in her heart she knew one thing was still left: acceptance. And only dawn would reveal if her people's hearts had truly changed. The human changed everything. The battlefield lay quiet. The rival tribe had fled into the shadows, leaving only broken weapons and trembling echoes behind. Smoke from the fires drifted into the sky, and the village stood in stunned silence. All eyes were fixed on her, the giantess who had once been called a curse. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, her arms bruised, her legs bleeding from cuts, yet she stood tall, towering like a mountain unbroken. Beside her the human stood, his small frame steady, his eyes burning with pride. For a long moment, no one spoke. The villagers shifted, uncertain. Their whispers were not cruel this time, not sharp, but hesitant. The leader's staff trembled in his grip. His eyes darted between the giantess and the human who stood at her side. Finally, he raised his voice, softer now. "Perhaps we were blind." His words carried through the courtyard. "Perhaps strength is not a curse. Perhaps what we cast aside was our only shield." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some lowered their heads in shame. Others nodded slowly. For the first time, the people who had rejected her began to see. The giantess trembled, her voice cracked. "All my life I was told I was too big, too wrong. I believed it. I lived in shadows. But tonight, I fought, I protected, and I was not alone." She turned her gaze to the human, her tears glistening. "Because one heart believed in me when no others did." The human stepped forward, his hand brushing against her massive arm, his voice strong though his body weary. "She is more than size, more than shape, more than what you called her. She is worthy, she is love, she is hope, and I will stand with her, always." The villagers gasped. Some looked away in guilt. Others met her eyes for the first time. And in those eyes she saw something new: respect. The colony leader lowered his staff, his voice heavy with regret. "Outcast no longer. You are our protector. Without you, we would have fallen. You have proven your worth, not by what we demanded, but by who you are." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her heart swelled. For so long she had waited to hear words like these. Yet it was not the leader's voice that gave her peace. It was the human's hand still holding her, reminding her she was never alone. The villagers slowly approached, children hiding behind their mothers, elders bowing their heads. The same people who once mocked her now reached out in quiet gratitude. A child she had saved earlier ran forward, wrapping tiny arms around her massive finger, his voice soft. "Thank you." Her chest ached. She bent low, her tears falling onto the earth. Her voice whispered, "I am not too big to be loved. I am big enough to love." The human smiled, his eyes warm as he met hers, and big enough to change everything. The crowd fell silent, their anger broken, their fear replaced by awe. They saw not a curse, but a savior, not a monster, but a guardian. And in that silence the bond between human and giantess shone brighter than any flame. As the dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold, she stood tall beside the human, her heart no longer chained, her voice no longer silent. The colony that once rejected her now bowed their heads in respect. They would never look at her the same way again, but more important than their acceptance was the truth she now held in her heart. She was not defined by their judgment. She was not broken. She was not worthless. She was loved. And the one who gave her that truth stood at her side, fragile in body yet stronger in spirit than all the rest. The giantess reached down, lifting the human into her hands, holding him close against her chest. Her voice carried across the courtyards, steady and full of power. Too big to be loved, they said, but his touch changed everything. The villagers bowed. The leader lowered his staff in surrender, and for the first time in her life, she walked not in shame, but in honor. Together, human and giantess stepped forward into the new dawn, hand in hand, heart to heart. And from that day on, her people no longer whispered curse, they whispered legend, the end. Enjoyed the story? Like it and subscribe for more.